Hello there, everybody. Eric here, your Learning Futurist, and it finally happened. We knew it was coming, but advertising has hit virtual reality in kind of a mainstreamy way with the announcement of Facebook trying to test out some advertising in virtual reality environments through a third-party developer. And so in this video, I want to talk about advertising inside of virtual worlds and using immersive technology, also mixed and augmented reality, kind of what's the big questions and ethics involved, and what this news and Facebook has done to kind of show us maybe what's going to be happening the next couple years around this technology and its role in raking in all those billions of dollars in advertising that seem to be having the big tech corps salivating. Coming right up. All right, so advertising in virtual worlds and augmented reality, virtual reality, is not necessarily a new thing. It came probably more predominantly first in augmented reality than in virtual reality. I can show you a bunch of examples from in the past, but as early, I think, as 2014 is the first time I saw this in the wild when Domino's Pizza had virtual kind of concerts with the virtual idol Miku on top of Domino's Pizza's box using augmented reality. But now, pretty much everybody's doing it. If you want to add extra information, for example, on a bottle of wine, you can augment it with those with like an image trigger type situation, and that got kind of accelerated with the data collection of companies like Niantic with Pokemon Go, and even more recently, companies are actually building platforms to house showrooms and make augmented virtual reality advertising content for mainly the big advertising spenders, your Adidas, your McDonald's, etc. And this is actually a pretty good move, and you can see some of these dollars that kind of pushed early kind of seeding and funding for possible growth using these technologies, because not only is it a new, novel, interesting way to show your company's branding, but it's also a new way to gather more insights, more information, more data about people that might be interested in your product. We talk about that a lot on this channel. So what's going on right now? Well, to come back to the advertising bit, there's a game, Blastion, I think it's called, Blastion, and it's a kind of a platformer game developed for the Oculus Quest and available in Oculus Quest Store by a third-party developer. This is not developed by Facebook, but they were approached by Facebook to put advertising in their space. Think the Jihali scene in Tron, right? There's two people in this virtual kind of arena, and they're shooting things back and forth at each other. They were going to put ads inside of that virtual arena, much like you can see ads, in football and soccer arenas all over. And there's a lot of advertising dollars in that. So this would be kind of like what that might look like, right? So inside of this virtual environment, you might see sponsored ads pop up inside of that environment, and maybe you could click on it and get more information sent to you from being inside of these virtual worlds. So kind of like billboards inside of a virtual space. This is just one way that Facebook wanted to experiment with putting ads into virtual reality. Of course, there are so many other ways. This actually seems a much less intrusive way, to me anyway, of putting ads in here. I think of much more intrusive ways that advertising would be integrated into virtual world, virtual reality settings. But this is what they were kind of looking to propose. But there was a ton of backlash. Of course, Facebook is not doesn't have the greatest reputation about data collection and advertising and what that's done in their mobile app and on the open web. And so they got this company that creates the Blaston game got a barrage of user feedback, and they backed out of the agreement with Facebook. And so they're no longer going to be testing out, at least right now, with their game Blast On. No, I think one partly reason that this was looked down upon, it's another thing of like, do you own the things you own? This is a game that you actually have to purchase for $10 in the Oculus store. And when you purchase something and there's no ads in it, and all of a sudden ads start popping up to it afterwards, you start to question why you paid money for that app to begin with, because there's a lot of different business models, right? You either get it free with advertising or you pay to have no ads. And that's kind of the understanding, the agreement with a lot of apps in both mobile and now moving into the virtual settings. So they backed away. But why was Facebook actually approaching this company to try out the ads at first? Because actually, Facebook has bought up the most talent and the most, the best companies creating VR games for the past couple years. And they just bought another company, Big Box VR. Beat Saber, which is one of the most popular games ever in virtual reality. They bought the makers of that. They could easily start testing advertising in any of these games that they currently own. But I think that might draw a little more scrutiny and a little more pressure from perhaps upcoming possible, we don't have no idea, but possible, this, I'm thinking ahead here, I'm speculating, possible regulation against putting ads when you can collect this much data about a person, right? So I think maybe they were going through a third party to kind of tiptoe and test the waters a little bit, but I'm speculating with that. All right, so there are some big, huge questions that kind of go along with this idea of advertising in virtual reality, and why Facebook may not be, even though they're seeing this as a way to get into the hardware market, because they didn't do well trying to introduce a phone, and they're blocked by Apple these days by collecting extra data. So this is their future look. This is their play for collecting data and continuing their business model of advertising dollars. So here's some questions we need to kind of think about that this kind of raises, especially when Facebook is involved. So first one is the use of biometric data. I did a couple of videos about this already on my channel. You can look at kind of the other bigger issues around biometric data and its connection to immersive technology in another video. But being able to connect advertising to your physicality, your movements, your brain patterns, your where you are physically in the world, and other kind of things about the physical person that you are is, I think, has potential to be very dangerous. Like where you look inside of a VR world, what you interact with, how you interact with it. There's already been studies shown that Facebook can be used to target people with, for example, obsessive compulsive disorders or learning disabilities by targeting certain keywords and behaviors using the advertising settings and approaches that you can use for the Facebook advertising tools. That might be, those dangers, those risks will probably be exacerbated in virtual reality if your biometric data can be used in targeting and in use of showing ads. The next one is the forward-facing camera. So I can show you my device now. To be able to track you inside of this headset, there are 4 outward-facing cameras that is currently taking data so you can move inside of the virtual world that's being shown inside of you. But that camera data is never seen to you. And because you have these goggles on your face, you can't see what pictures are being taken from you. So that data that's being used and collected about the room you're in, the people around you, if that could be used to perhaps try to recognize some branding that's in your room, or recognize some faces of people that are with you, see the size of the room or the contents in it to be used for advertising, is also very possibly invasive, and I hope to be somewhat illegal moving forward to the future. All right, third and probably the most important question is the business model around advertising and how it connects to apps in virtual reality. So if we take what we see now in the mobile world, a thing like the Google App Store or the Apple App Store, I'm sorry, Google Play Store, there's kind of a bunch of models, and Apple and Google are taking cuts of all that. And there's either, for example, in the gaming world, games get put out kind of for free. They show you a bunch of ads and they get paid by showing ads inside of their games. So a lot of those games are getting really good at making you watch an ad, right? You can't, especially the younger generation, they don't want to pay for a game. They'll tolerate having to watch a 20, 30-second ad in order to get something in the game for like a virtual item or something like that. That invasiveness of a mobile app making you watch just a video, you can at least look away, right, from that content on your phone. But in a virtual world, you can actually be forced to be in a virtual environment, interact with some things, and you cannot escape it. You cannot evade that kind of situation. You're much more immersed in the content. So that targeting in that advertisers want and want to pay for can be a lot more intrusive in virtual worlds. So if that same business model is upheld from the mobile world into virtual reality, I worry about how pervasive and the extent to which advertisers can pay money to force you to be inside of these worlds, or act out or see things or do things inside of virtual reality, and make people basically take the headset off, but then you know if it's on or off, so you can't maybe even get out of that as well. So the business models around that are quite worrying to me. Now, this all comes down to the business models, especially come down to my underlying kind of concern around the use of advertising in virtual reality and taking that business model from the mobile world into VR, and that is the engagement algorithm. So Facebook, to take that example from earlier, really hones in on this engagement algorithm. YouTube is very good at this as well. They take what you've clicked on before, how much you've watched a video for, when did you click away from particular ads, how fast you're scrolling beyond certain posts, what you stop to look at. TikTok is very, very good at this as well. And this engagement algorithm shows you things that you perhaps want to see, or at least the algorithm thinks that you want to see, and shows you more of it to keep your eyeballs more engaged. This can be exacerbated in virtual worlds because we're taking in more data about how you're interacting, how you're viewing, how you're using these environments with these systems. Now, if this engagement algorithm is further refined using these extra bits of data, this biometric data, I can see this kind of exacerbating the loop that we see with a lot of social media addiction, right? This loop that you get a notification to get in the Facebook app to see if somebody likes something. You're there and you see a couple things you like, and you go into this compulsion loop, right? With this, that might get exacerbated because the algorithms will learn much more about how to keep you inside virtual worlds and to keep your eyeballs, to keep you engaged, to keep you showing more. And that race to keep you in might very well, in some cases, in certain situations, be a race to the bottom as far as effectively using human consciousness and time. We can somehow say that, of course, we all need a break to, open our phones and be mindless from time to time, but these algorithms are trying so very hard to get your attention and to keep your attention, and it's very likely that that can be exacerbated inside of virtual worlds, especially with the billions of dollars in advertising that is up for grabs. Well, I think I have a lot more to say about this, but I think I'll just leave it there for now. What do you guys think? Advertising in virtual reality. I've seen it a lot already in augmented reality in the past 10 years following this, but this is really going to start coming to a head. Apple's coming into the virtual reality game probably in 2022, and they're probably going to have a different approach. And Facebook and these devices are already going to be, I wouldn't say ubiquitous, but in a lot of different places by the time that happens. So how advertising starts to play out and how the advertising dollars start pushing the development of the software and environments in these worlds is going to be high impact, very high impact. And so we're going to have to keep an eye on it and those questions that I asked you earlier in this video. Love to hear what you have to say. Please put them down in the comments. All right, guys. See you in the next video. Bye-bye now.